Sunday night, John Lund is in the house on the Krueg Show. We're talking NFL playoffs. We're talking Niners. We're looking ahead to the draft. Let's go right now. Join us. Off and running after the NFL playoffs. 3 games in the books today, 1 more tomorrow. Welcome to the Krueg Show, brought to you by Pick It Up Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week. We're also brought to you by Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles, 205 Cypress Avenue in Pacific Grove. My friend Anthony Catania is at 831-521-5264. And this live stream is sponsored by Better, the official daily fantasy sponsor of the Krueg Show. Use Better to make daily fantasy lineups and win real money. We did it a bunch this year. Download the app. Make sure you use the promo code Niners to get your first deposit matched up to $200. Everyone who does is automatically entered to win a free signed Ricky Pearsall number 14 red Niner jersey. We have it, and we will be giving it away on Super Bowl Sunday in our postgame show. So thanks to Better for being a proud sponsor of the Krueg Show. John Lund in the house. And Johnny, good stuff today. We just watched the Commanders knock out the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, winning on the road 23-20. Commanders outscored the Bucs 10-3 in the fourth quarter to win the game 23-20. Jaden Daniels is just, I don't even know what to say. He is just he's such a unique young quarterback because he just has this tremendous calm. He's very accurate. He plays under control. He's smart with the football. He was in his first playoff game on the road. Now, granted, it's Tampa. It's not like he's playing, in the hardest place to play of all time, but still on the road, first playoff game. Todd Bowles loves to blitz and mix it up a little bit. Daniels 24 of 35, 268, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and then led them in rushing. They didn't have a huge rush effort, but he had 13 carries for 36 yards, just enough to, keep him honest, and completed a pass to 35 yards down the field to McLaurin. De'Ami Brown had a big night, and the Commanders go on the road and they get it done. What'd you think of the kid?
Yeah, I thought he was great, and it's funny because everybody on your comments are already saying that Jaden Daniels is better than Purdy, and people have to understand that he is a rookie, and in the offseason, what will happen in that division is teams will adjust to Jaden Daniels. He likes to run. He's very skinny. He's going to get hit hard next season. You watch. Teams will go after him and hit him, and we'll see what Jaden Daniels is. It is hard when the season continues to progress and the years continue to progress, because then what has to happen is you have to get better and you have to change your game. But the one thing that you cannot deny that he is better at already than Brock Purdy is, when he got the ball at the end there and the game was tied at 20 after Tampa had tied it with the field goal, was there a doubt in your mind that Jaden Daniels is going to make enough plays to get him down the field? He can run it. He can throw it. He's calm. He's cool. I like Brock Purdy, and in no means is this a rip at Brock Purdy, but the facts are the facts. Brock, Kyle, whatever the case may be, they don't come back and win games in the fourth quarter. And once Jaden Daniels hit a couple of shots, he started to get some confidence. And all of a sudden, you thought, well, Washington's going to go down and win this game. And I like Baker Mayfield, and I didn't think this was going to be a great game, but it certainly was the best game of the day, maybe the best game of the weekend. But yeah, like you said, you got to get him up to Jaden Daniels. He was great when it counted. And when it comes to athletics, that's what matters most. Throw out all the stats and all the different things that everybody likes to do. It's when the game is on the line, what do you do? And he won the game.
He's just a very calm, cool customer. Baker Mayfield was 15 of 18, high percentage, and didn't turn it over interception-wise, 2 touchdowns. But 185 yards is all he threw for. Bucky Irving looked pretty good. He ran for 4 or 5 a carry. Mike Evans almost had 100 yards. He got in the end zone. Jalen McMillan looked really good in this game. But the Commanders made the plays when they needed to make the plays. And I'll say this, too. The Commanders' offensive line, this Tampa defense can be tough. And they only had 1 sack and only 4 hits all day. So I mean, not that Washington got a bunch of sacks on Baker either. Washington had 1 sack and only 2 hits on Baker all day. So it wasn't a game where the quarterbacks got beaten up on. But credit the Commanders. They did just enough to win this thing on the road. And would you give them any shot next week of going into Detroit and beating the Lions?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I mean, look, that's a cool first win for them. They hadn't been there in a while, and Dan Quinn in his backwards hat and Adam Peters, and give him a ton of credit. They get a guy like Bobby Wagner, who's a veteran. He got that fumble late in the game. You got to get that mix of young guys, old guys, but give him a ton of credit. And that's a really tough division. We can get into the Eagles and what they did today against the Packers and all that stuff, but that's a great first step for Washington. You come in, nobody's expecting anything out of you. You go 12-5 in the season. You go into Tampa Bay and you get a victory. I thought Tampa was going to win that game, find a way. I thought Baker would make a play. I thought that run he had before the end of the first half really sparked them. I thought they'd come out in the second half and really play well, but they give them a ton of credit, give Adam Peters credit, Dan Quinn credit, and he wasn't really their first choice to be their head coach. So give him a ton of credit. But the way that, and I know we'll expand into this, but, Jalen Hurts is really struggling for the Eagles. If Detroit doesn't go to the Super Bowl and having worked there, I always tell my friends back there, Lion's going to lion. They'd have to screw it up to not win the NFC because Philly doesn't look dominant. Washington's a great story. I just think the NFC this year is the Lions to lose.
Not one lie that the Commanders got a win today, but they also lost Deron Payne,
big time.
Ben Sinnott, Jordan McGee. They all left the game. Sinnott has a shoulder injury. Daniels got a gash on his face on one play. But the Commanders are interesting. I don't think they're going to be able to do it though. I don't think they're going to be able to go into Detroit. I really love Daniels, and I think he's got major upside. I don't see them having quite enough to go into Detroit and beat them. The other takeaway from tonight's game is it wasn't lost on Niner fans that 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐜 Gonzalez was a Niner, and the Niners don't need the best kicker. They just need a decent kicker.
It's not like he drilled that kick, though. I mean, my God, it doinked off it looked like he was going to miss it. So,
but I mean,
𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐜
Gonzalez has got at least a big leg.
Yeah.
He also has a big leg. And you know what? I mean, right now, 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐜 Gonzalez, Jake Moody. Who do you want? I'll take 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐜 Gonzalez.
Yeah, it's this offseason is going to be really interesting because, Krueg, and this, they took him in the third round, and they're going to do everything they can to rehab his mind. But I don't care if it's a preseason game next year. If he misses one in the preseason, the people who, have those tickets that were given to them because it was a preseason game by people who actually own those tickets are going to boo their ass off, and he's going to be right back where he is. So I know they're going to bring him back, and they're going to try to rehab him mentally. But if he misses a kick, even in preseason, whoever they're bringing in to compete with him is going to win the job because he is fragile as hell. He has a big leg. We could any of those kickers who did well when they came in, Carlson and Wright and those guys, they made field goals, but they couldn't kick the ball out of the end zone. And it's one of the reasons why Brian Schneider's gone is, when Moody was gone, he missed field goals, but nobody could kick the damn ball out of the end zone except for Jake Moody. So I know that people don't think that is a big deal, but it kind of is.
Yeah, no, I mean, and we'll see. I mean, some people want Jake Moody banished from the kingdom. Other people say, just bring in somebody to compete. They invested an awful lot. They love him. Lynch has talked about how he's going to be the kicker for a long time. They were totally non-committal at the end of the year about Jake. He had two different seasons. He had the season before he rolled the ankle badly, and then the season after. And the season before was headed towards the Pro Bowl, and the season after is headed towards the unemployment line. So, I do think they're going to give him another shot, but I think that you got to have somebody there, not just a nominal competition. You have to have a real competition at kicker this summer. If Jake's there, that's fine, but there's got to be a real, not one of these, it's Jake's job, wink, wink. It's got to be a real competition, no bogus deal, because I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you hand it to him. Let's talk about the earlier games. Yeah. Eagles beat the Packers 22-10. And, give me your takeaway on the game. Jordan Love, 3 interceptions for Green Bay. Hurts took care of the football. Hurts ran for 36 yards, 6 yards a carry. Big day for Saquon Barkley. And Philly gets an early 10-0 lead, and they wind up winning 22-10 at home.
Well, first of all, the fumble that K'Von Nixon had to start the game, it's obviously you're on the road. You don't want that to happen. But I don't, replays drive me nuts because Nixon clearly recovered the ball. It's a massive play to start the game if people didn't see it. He fumbles. It gets stolen away from him by Jeremiah Trotter Jr., but he did fumble the ball on the opening kickoff, but he's on his back and he has it. But unfortunately for him, he was facing up. So had he turned around and just cradled the ball, he'd be fine. He could have kept it. But it was shown from the overhead camera he had it. And now, you're down. And then Jeremiah Trotter steals it away from him. He's already on the ground. If you can't make that a definitive call to overturn, especially on a kickoff that starts the game in which Philly then gets the ball inside the Packers 20, scores a touchdown, and really it was just kind of a defensive battle for the most part from that point. How do you not change that call? It's clear. It's obvious. I know we've had a million conversations, baseball, basketball, all these different things. Why is it so hard in today's day and age of technology to make right calls? It blows my mind. It's just not that hard, is it? We can do all these things with technology. We have AI and this crazy stuff that goes on, and yet a clear overhead view of a ball recovered by the team receiving the kickoff, which changes the game right off the gate. You can't get that right? That's unbelievable to me.
It's like it just the replay. It's like if you talk to the people that are proponents of replay, they always make it seem so simple, but it's really just opens a whole nother can of worms. And it's like you can't come up with a system.
Yeah, Oren Burks made that caused that fumble. That's right. Somebody hit that up. Yeah.
How about this? If we really want to have an equitable system, how about use replay with no predisposition?
That's a great point. That's a really good point.
How about instead of you throw
it was called on this way on the field, and it has to be definitive. Just look at it like it didn't get called anything.
Like if you go to since there was the fires down in LA, I was thinking of Santa Anita, because Santa Anita was in harm's way there. I don't think it got burned down, but Santa Anita, if you're down at Santa Anita and you're watching grade 1 horse racing and there's a photo finish, you don't hear them say, and the 7-horse won pending a review.
That's a great point.
They don't say that. They just say
inquiry.
Mm-hmm. In other words, we don't know who won. We're going to check the tape. They don't say the 7-horse beat the 2. They don't say the 2 beat the 7. They just say inquiry. And then they go to the tape. There is no predisposition. They're not predisposed to any decision. And they just look at the film and see what it says, and then come back and say the 7-horse was the winner. And that's it.
That's a great call.
Like in the NFL, it was ruled a fumble on the field, but there was no video evidence that could overturn that. But most people think it wasn't. It's like, no, just say
you almost have to do it's almost like 75-25. So in other words, what you're suggesting is very logical, which means it'll never happen, which is it's just going into it. It's a 50-50. When they say the official, this is the way it was called on the field, it almost has to be like 75% the other way, like blatantly obvious, which I thought that play was. And look, I don't care who wins that game. I'm not an Eagles fan. I'm not a Packers fan. I'm just saying, it's pretty obvious on the overhead view that the dude has the ball and he's down. And then Trotter comes in there and just rips it out while the guy's laying on his back trying to turn over to get away from the guy. So, like I said, look, but beyond that obvious play, Jalen Hurts isn't right. And, going into the playoffs, I thought Philadelphia was going to beat Detroit in the NFC. And that still may be the case. But he doesn't look like the Jalen Hurts that went to the Super Bowl. They lost to Kansas City, but he doesn't look like that guy that played the Niners in the NFC Championship game and was tearing it up. I know the Eagles are playing great, and they have the number 1 defense, and Saquon is great, and all these kind of things. Their offensive line is tremendous, but Jalen Hurts is still not a great NFL quarterback, and I think it's going to cost them at some point. That's why I like Detroit in the NFC so much, is not only because they're the number 1 seed, but they get a young Washington team that's probably pretty excited to just be in this round. And then I don't know that, tomorrow night, if Minnesota, for example, goes to Arizona because of the fires, the game's not in LA. If Minnesota beats LA, which I think they will, I think Minnesota's beating Philadelphia, and I think we're getting another Minnesota-Detroit in Detroit.
That's interesting. I like Philadelphia to win next week and get into that game, but yeah, I do see a lot of the same flaws that you're talking about with Philadelphia. The one thing with Philadelphia, though, is that there's so many facets of the game that they're really rolling. I mean, Barkley is just such a monster.
Yeah.
They have just a big, menacing, dominating offensive line. All their weapons, Devontae, Goddard, Dotson, I mean, AJ Brown, a lot of these guys have been to the Super Bowl. They've got lots of experience, and they're relatively healthy. And then, defensively, I guess what happened to Nakobe Dean?
That looked bad. Yeah, he was leaving on crutches, and that doesn't look good. Now, obviously, we know what the NFL can do in those kind of things, but yeah, that looked bad. And you make a great point. One of the best signings of the offseason was that Zach Baum deal when they got him from New Orleans. And I'm not surprised. I mean, this better than I do because you're so great with the draft. He was great at Wisconsin. I was surprised he wasn't better in New Orleans. I thought he was going to be an awesome player. So with those two guys at linebacker, that's what I'm saying about Philly. They might be just good enough, as you point out, to win the NFC without great quarterback play from Jalen Hurts. They're that good defensively. But if he's out of that game, if Nakobe Dean is out of that play, or out of that game, they're going to have to get some guys to step up. But yeah, he left the stadium on crutches.
I got to think Detroit's the big favorite over Washington, but I don't know how Detroit's defense is really going to stop Jaden Daniels. I mean, Jaden Daniels to me looks like he's going to do what he's going to do. And they got, they didn't run the ball well in this game, but, it's, I don't know. I would lean towards Detroit, but could you imagine a Final Four of Detroit and Philly in the NFC and the AFC, Buffalo and Kansas City?
I can't wait to see Buffalo. I think they're
Buffalo,
definitely on a collision course.
Buffalo.
Well, that's a good point because Houston's not going to put up much resistance. I give them a ton of credit for getting to where they're getting, but I don't think they're beating Kansas City. Although I don't think Kansas City's as dominant as they've been. They'll find a way. But you're right. The best divisional game by far is Ravens at Bills. I mean, Ravens at Bills is going to be awesome. I hope it's awesome. But that could come. Now they've already voted for the MVP, so that's not going to matter there. But I mean, that's 1 and 2 in the MVP in some way, shape, or form, right? Lamar or Josh, whatever order you want to put them in. Those are the 2 MVPs. That's going to be awesome.
As far as this Green Bay Philly game, something Dieter and I were going back and forth, and I said, "Man, I like Philly." He said, "I like Green Bay," and I understand why he liked Green Bay, but outside of Josh Jacobs, they didn't look like much. Like they have so many receivers, but Watson got hurt, and so he was out, didn't play in this game. Dobbs landed on his head or something. He left with a neck injury. Jaden Reed, they threw him 4 balls. He caught 4 balls. But man, this incredible depth of weaponry that the Green Bay had just got watered down by injuries as the thing went on. And they, Jaden Reed, Josh Jacobs, Dontavion Wicks, Tucker Kraft, Bo Melton, Dobbs played in this game. They're all decent, but there's no true guy there. I like Kraft. I like Reed. He's kind of a gamer, but I just feel like, Green Bay is on the verge, but they could use that great. They got a lot of good, and they could use a great player on offense. They didn't show much offense. I know Philly's got a good defense and Fangio, and we just talked about Zach Bond. Nolan Smith had a couple sacks, and
gets fast.
Jalen Carter's really, really good. I mean, they got some pieces for sure in Philly, but Green Bay should have been able to score more than 10 points. Come on, that was an embarrassing performance from Green Bay's offense, I thought.
Well, I think Jordan Love has taken a major step back. I think that it's a little, and I'm not saying that Brock is in this neighborhood, but what it is we talked about this right at the beginning. We all, everybody adjusts. Same thing with baseball. They show something, and then they spend this time in the offseason, and they say, okay, we're not going to let you do that. And then you've got to adjust and back and forth and back and forth. Now, I think with Brock, a lot of it was the weapons were gone. He tried to do too much. I think that when Brock gets his weapons back, I think Brock is going to be a much better player. And everybody was complaining about the contract. I think he's going to get back to what his first 2 years were. Jordan Love, to me, looks skittish in the pocket. He's inaccurate. That 4th down throw that basically any chance they had to come back in that game, it was wide open. A guy had an out pattern. There was no one on him. You just put it on the guy. He threw it too far to the sideline. He couldn't get both his feet down. He was that way all day long, and there was no pressure on that throw. You got to make that throw in the playoffs. And so you were just talking about Jaden Daniels and how well he's playing and how composed he is. Jordan Love, I like Jordan Love. He's played well. He's gotten a lot better. I went to Utah State. I watched a ton of his games in college. I thought this guy's too hit and miss. He's a really good athlete, but he did not have a good year this year. But that game also against Philadelphia, give that defense credit. But that throw on fourth down, I'm not going to say he cost him the season, but that was an easy throw. That was a pitch and catch, and he missed it.
Yeah. And the first game of the day, Buffalo 31-7 over Denver. The Bills are interesting. Now we get Bills Ravens next week in Buffalo, and Josh Allen against Lamar. Josh Allen looks really good. 20-26, 272 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had 8 runs for 46 yards. But the guy who really, first of all, that Buffalo offensive line is looking really good. And they paved the way. They ran it 44 times for 210 yards. James Cook had 120 yards and over 5 yards a carry. Ray Davis had a serious injury, I believe, at the end of this game, which that is something to investigate because he's a pretty good player and gives them some depth. But man, Josh Allen, John, without awesome weapons. Cook is coming into his own for sure, but their leading receiver today was Curtis Samuel. Their second leading receiver was Khalil Shakir, who was good at Boise, but come on.
It's amazing what they're doing.
Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox. They do have a couple sticky-handed tight ends, but Mari Cooper did nothing in this game. Keon Coleman, who was a high pick, did nothing in this game. What do you think? But it was a good win today for Buffalo, but it was Bo Nix, a rookie quarterback on the road in his first NFL playoff game. And, it was 10-7 Buffalo at halftime. So it was anybody's ball game, but Denver really, outside of Nix, couldn't run the ball at all. What'd you think of Buffalo's win this morning?
I think they looked extremely dominant. Like you said, they didn't look dominant in the first half, but in the second half, you mentioned Curtis Samuel, that catch and run he had early in the third quarter, it just kind of put the game away. Was it 21-7? Then after the Samuel catch and run, it was 28-7. Look, I give Bo Nix a ton of credit. If you're not going to say Daniels the rookie of the year, then Nix is. And it goes back to, what do you have, 61 career starts at college between Auburn and Oregon. It means something that you have all those starts. Jaden Daniels, a ton of starts between Arizona State and Louisiana State. Coming in and having all those starts matters when you see the composure that both of those two kids have. So, I think Denver has a pretty bright future with that kid if you put him with Sean Payton, and they're going to be all right. But they're not on the level of Buffalo. But let me go back to what you said, and this is why I think there are a lot of different ways that you can interpret who the MVP is. But to me, you just mentioned the receivers that are on this team. The Niners have far better weapons than what the Bills do, and yet every single week Josh Allen makes these plays. And I like Cook. I like their backfield. I like both of their tight ends. They're really good. But like you said, Shakur and Keon Coleman and Curtis Samuel, guys like that, those aren't what the 49ers have when the 49ers are healthy. So, all the complaints that the 49ers lost all these guys, well, hell, even those 2 tight ends that Buffalo have, they don't equal George Kittle. None of those guys equal what the receivers have for the 49ers when they're healthy. None of those guys equal Christian McCaffrey or Mason when they're healthy. So if the 49ers get healthy, there's no reason why they shouldn't offensively dominate. But as far as the MVP is concerned, look, I like Lamar. I think Josh Allen's going to win it. I think Josh Allen should win it. They blow him out today, and he has good help, not great help, and the offensive line is good, not great. I thought Buffalo, because obviously they lost Diggs to the Texans, or they traded him because they got sick of him. I thought they were going to take a step back, and I think this is their best chance ever to win a Super Bowl, because at least get out of the AFC. Because as much as I like Kansas City, sometimes your luck runs out. Now maybe it won't with Mahomes, but Krueg, how many one-score games has Kansas City won this year? This is Buffalo's best chance, and yet here's Josh Allen with, I don't know, maybe his worst cast offensively. He's just carrying him every week.
I know. And, it makes – so far everything's run very according to kind of the way form, But you got to think that there's a surprise coming up here somewhere. Somebody's going to somebody's going to get knocked out.
Yeah, you're right.
It could maybe it's the Commanders go to Detroit and knock out the knock out the Lions, because I just think so highly of Daniels. And it just seems like if you told me that Jaden Daniels got by Detroit and got the Commanders into the Super Bowl, it would be the kind of story that's just improbable enough. But I mean, it would be incredible. I mean, as a kid who played at LSU and then comes home a couple years later and he's playing in the Super Bowl in New Orleans. I mean, it would just be what a story that would be. And Daniels is just so special. So I don't know. I mean, I think I probably would go Detroit and Kansas City, but it could be Buffalo, it could be Baltimore, and any of these teams in the NFC could rise up, and it's going to be very interesting to see who steps up. I have a buddy who believes strongly in the playoff theory, the quarterback theory, which is just always go in the playoffs with whoever's the superior quarterback. And I mean, if you think about it, in this round, who won these games? I mean, you had Houston beat the Chargers, and that's Stroud over
awful.
Herbert.
What do you throw? 4 picks in that game?
Jackson beat Russell.
Mm-hmm.
Hurts beat Love. Daniels beat Baker. And, if it holds to form, Stafford will beat Darnold. Right? I mean, if
I think Minnesota's going to be tough. Yeah, I think Minnesota's. Yeah, I think it's going to be tough for the Rams to beat the Vikings. I think the Vikings are legit just because of all the weapons they have. Brian Flores' defense, how aggressive they are. That's the team. I think next week, if they beat the Rams, which I think they will, Philly's going to have their hands full with Minnesota unless Jalen Hurts plays better. I think that could be a big upset. Ravens and Bills is going to be a great one. I am interested in watching Kansas City, not so much against Houston, but in the next round, whether they get Baltimore or Buffalo, it's going to be really tough. I'm not disrespecting Kansas City. I mean, they're going for a three-peat, and we all know what Patrick Mahomes can do, so I'm not going to sell him short ever. But it's been their defense. Last-minute plays by Patrick Mahomes, give him credit, and their defense in a ton of one-score games. And a couple of years ago when Minnesota won all those one-score games, we sat there and went, well, Minnesota, it's going to come up on them sometime, and it did in the playoffs. And I don't think Kansas City's getting out of the AFC. I think Baltimore and Buffalo are just too good. And it's weird to say that about a 15-1 team, but Kansas City has been far from dominant, even though they're 15-1.
Was there anything that really surprised you in this opening weekend of the NFL playoffs? Ladd McConkey sure looked damn good. He had 9 catches for 197 and a touchdown.
Well, doesn't that come back to he was just taking a couple of picks after Pearsall, and I think Pearsall is going to be really, really good. But again, the draft as well as anybody, and McConkey was great at Georgia, and so between two guys who played in the SEC, and I'm not saying Pearsall can't be better, he can, but given what McConkey is doing, and he looks really, really good, I do wonder if we're going to look back and say maybe they made a bad choice on that one, because what was he taking, like 2-3 picks after Pearsall, both from the SEC. Pearsall I liked some of the stuff we saw from Pearsall at the end of the season, and we all know what happened with the shooting and not being in camp and all those kind of things, so it's not a completely fair shake, but that kid looks legit. McConkey looks legit.
Oh yeah, he's a tough little guy, and he's fast, man. He's really, really fast. I will say this, okay, if you're saying what are our takeaways from this weekend, a lot of times it's hard to know. The NFL, you don't find out a lot about these teams down the stretch sometimes because the games always don't mean, sometimes don't mean anything down the stretch, especially week 18 oftentimes means nothing. So it's hard sometimes to discern form of these playoff teams until you actually put them on a field where if you win, you move on. If you lose, you go home and your season's over. And there's that finality. And so they put all their best players out there and they put their best foot forward, and nobody's resting and nobody's taking any time off. And if you can go, you're out there. So I think you learn so much about these teams in these playoffs. And I'll tell you a couple things that really stood out this weekend. One, the Houston Texans. Let's talk about the Houston Texans for a second. 10-7, 5-3 at home this year. They beat the Chargers 32-12. they made Justin Herbert look awful. He threw 4 picks. They sacked him 4 times. Stroud looked a little nervous early, but man, they got Joe Mixon now in the backfield. Stroud woke up and started making some big-time plays. Nico Collins is a true number 1 receiver. So they got a number 1 receiver. They got a true number 1 back. They got a young quarterback that's coming on. But defensively, they had just dudes. Like 𝐿𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐿 is just playing awesome right now. The 𝐷𝐿𝐴 kid, who played at played for Bama, Henry To'o or
the linebacker,
whatever.
yeah.
He's amazing. He's playing incredible. Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter off the edges. Folorunso Fatukasi made a couple of major plays.
You were waiting in the weeds with that one.
Folorunso Fatukasi. I'm all over that. But the 2 guys that I think are, if I'm Kansas City, I am very, very scared. And that is those 2 corners. Derek Stingley Jr. is playing amazing football. And the Lassiter kid from Georgia, Kamari Lassiter, he's playing amazing football. So now you have these 2 fantastic corners who are playing at a really, really high level. Stingley had 2 more interceptions in this game. When they played Miami earlier this year, Houston, they went to Tyreek Hill. He totally shut Tyreek Hill down, and then he picked off 2 balls going to Tyreek in the 4th quarter. Stingley is a true number 1 corner, and then Kamari Lassiter might be a number 1 corner as well. So Houston is able to do things defensively, John, that, they've got great individual talent, lots of edge rush ability, and then 2 totally dominant number 1 corners. And when you have 2 like that, man, you can beat anybody. So I'm really interested to see Texans Chiefs next week. Those corners are going to take away the Chiefs receivers, and Mahomes is going to have to run or find Kelsey all day.
Well, just everything you're describing, because at the beginning of the season, a lot of people thought what you're saying about Houston was the way that they're going to be. I mean, think about Danielle Hunter next to across from Will Anderson and those guys in the corner. And people forget, Stingley was a 3rd overall pick. He was taken ahead of Sauce Gardner, and Sauce had the better early career. Stingley was a freshman All-American at LSU, and the guy can play. He's just gotten a lot better. I think the big thing and a lot of the complaints came from people because CJ Stroud clearly wasn't what he was in the first year, but it's not like these guys aren't talented. So while I think Kansas City's going to win that game, do remember this was right in 19 when the Niners lost to the Chiefs in Super Bowl 54 in Miami. The Texans were up on Kansas City 24-0 at the end of the first quarter. They absolutely rolled them, and that was the year Kansas City came back against everybody, which is why when Tim Ryan turned to me in the booth in Miami when 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐿 scored the touchdown, and he goes, I think they're going to win this thing. And I go, dude, you can't say that. They come back on everyone, because that was the year they came back on everybody. But
right.
But they were up 24-0.
All the more reason Shanahan should have been more aggressive going into the on the last drive of the first half.
But I digress. But the reality is that, like you said, it's not that they're not talented. It's just that if you looked across the board and you just said clear talent, you might say Houston's up there. But man, 15, that's the only thing is you said, look towards this weekend. That's the only thing where I just think I can never bet against that guy, because I have before, and every single time it's burned me. So I think Houston could have a chance in this game. It's never easy going to Arrowhead, but Mahomes is just sitting in the weeds, man. And that's what gets me every single time. Not that Houston isn't talented, they are, but Mahomes he's just that guy, man.
Here's the other takeaway. One of the things that was just amazing watching these games is just watching what's winning. And the winning teams are running the shit out of the ball. Mm-hmm. And they're winning by completely dominating the time of possession. Well, some of these numbers are amazing this weekend. Baltimore ran 50 times for 299 yards. Now they have Lamar, so that's a big part of it, but 50 times for 299 yards, and they possessed the ball for 39 minutes and 33 seconds. Houston ran for 34 carries for 168 yards and possessed the ball against the Chargers for 34-25. Buffalo this morning ran 44 times for 210 yards, and they held the ball for 41 minutes and 43 seconds. And then this Eagles team at halftime, I was looking at the Eagles. They were up 10-0. Jalen Hurts had only thrown for 39 yards in the first half, but Philly was averaging 6.8 yards per carry, and they were up 10-0. So to me, I mean, as a 40, and looking at this from a 49er, goggles, message to the Niners: go get some big bodied road grading linemen in the interior. Keep drafting running backs in what is going to be one of the most amazing running back drafts maybe of our lifetime. I mean, there's all kinds of good running backs in this draft on every round. And, after the draft, I mean, there's just dudes. I mean, there are so many good running backs this year. It's crazy. Go do that. Right now, if you say what's the number one problem with the Niners,
by far,
you said the number one problem with the Niners. It's not Brock. It's not the special teams, which was a goddamn circus. There's no question. It was the fact that Kyle Shanahan regularly was passing the ball inside the 5 because he didn't believe in Brendel. He didn't believe in Banks. He didn't believe in his O-line. He didn't believe in his backs. Didn't believe in his play calling. Didn't believe that they could run in the low red zone, and they couldn't. So they've got to figure out a way, because guess what? Baltimore's got a big physical offensive line. They got Derrick Henry, and they can run the goddamn ball. Houston's got Mixon and a big, powerful line. They can run the ball. Buffalo, James Cook is hardly a superstar, but he's good enough, and they got a great line. They can run the ball. Philly's got a gigantic line, and Saquon Barkley, they can run the ball. Detroit, they're not going to have Montgomery the rest of the year, but they got Montgomery and Gibbs and the league's best offensive line. And they can run the ball. So, I mean, if you want to be in this mix for the Super Bowl in the next 5 years, you better get another back or two, because McCaffrey cannot be dependent on. The other guys are okay, but not to the level they need to be. And you got to upgrade this line, man. You got to get a big-bodied center and a better guard tandem and just a better, more physical offensive line and run the ball.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the end of the year and people, they hear this term complementary football, and maybe they don't know what it means. That's what it means, because it's not just the 30 runs. Everybody's like, oh, can Kyle get to 30 runs? Well, Kyle can get to 30 runs if his defense doesn't stink. The defense always has let the 49ers down after the last year and a half. So complementary football is, you better play good special teams. You better be able to give the coach confidence that you can stop it. They fell behind in games. I mean, if you look at the last couple of games for the 49ers, last few, it was like 40 passes and 18 runs. You don't even have to look at the scoreboard to know if the Niners are throwing at 40 and running at 18, they lost. You don't even have to look. And what's the biggest charge to me in the offseason is, and I know that Kyle and John said this, but you know this as well as I do, and you were sitting there at that press conference, the last one of the year, just because they said somebody's probably, or they want somebody back, whether it be Debo or Trent or anybody else, I'm not convinced Trent's 100% coming back. Trent's playing football right now because he wants to win. He's got plenty of money. Aaron Banks isn't coming back. He's a free agent. Brendel's on the ground all the time. How do you run power football when your left guard and center are completely useless? McKivitz is a turnstile. Clooney and Trent are the only guys, and you want to play punch you in the mouth football? You can't do that, especially when your defense stinks, your special team stinks. It all has to come together, and you have to earn running the football. And you just mentioned it today. The best teams, they run the football. They possess the ball. They keep their defense off the field. They minimize mistakes that way. They grind the other team's defense down. So in the fourth quarter, they've got nothing left. That's what complementary football is. And what we can talk about the injuries and all the other things that are either excuses or explanations. But the reality is, if you can't run it and grind the other team down and possess the ball, you can't win football games. That's just how it is. And you just hit it right on the head with all these teams that did that this weekend. And the 49ers didn't do it this year.
Well, I mean, it's funny. You watch your team every week, and you start to see the patterns. And there's certain things that other teams do that the 49ers don't do.
Or can't right now, right? I mean, with this offensive line, how can they run? How can they run the ball with this line? They cannot.
The one thing that stands out, when was the last time you saw the 49ers finish a game that they won on offense?
It's a good call right there.
They never finish on offense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They never do. They always can't run. They try to run when everybody knows they're going to run. They get stuffed, and then they put their defense back on the field. And then their defense either gets it done or doesn't get it done. Other teams run you out at the end of the game. Run you off the field. They need, you need to pick up that first down, you pick it up, and you stay out there, and you get in victory formation. How many times does Brock Purdy actually get in victory formation where they finish games on offense? They don't. They can't finish games on offense. So that's a real problem.
Can I ask you this? How
they can't run when they need to run. They can't get a yard when they need a yard.
That happens so much this year. Can they in this offseason, let's say Trent does come back and you have Pooney. I think they need to replace the other three positions. Is it realistic in an offseason between draft and free agency? Because you're not going to start three rookie offensive linemen. So you're going to have to combo this up. But then Brock's going into, he's going to get his deal, and there's other guys to sign. Can you keep Afunga? Can you keep Greenlaw? Can you do all these different things that you want to do? And still, which to me is the number one thing, even, the interior, the defensive line, you were there again. We talked about this a lot. Hargrave's not coming back. So I don't know who's going to be your interior defensive line. But the first thing they have to fix is at least three spots on the offensive line. And if Trent retires, then it's all hell's going to break loose. But let's just say he's coming back. Left guard, center, right tackle. Can you fix that in one off season so that you can become the team that used to be and you could bully teams and run the ball and possess the ball like they used to do and like all the good teams, especially in the NFC, are doing? You mentioned this. The Rams have a great offensive line. Philly does. Detroit does. The teams in the NFC took the blueprint from the 49ers and said, we're going to bludgeon you. And then the 49ers, for some reason, said, yeah, we're good. Like, that's what you used to do. And now the other teams do it and beat you that way. And then for whatever reason, you stop doing that. And until they do that again, they won't be up with those better teams in the NFC.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, it's a year that you're probably going to have to trade back if you're going to fill all your needs. But I think it's doable for sure. I mean, I think it's definitely doable that they could fill their needs on the offensive line and still rebuild their defensive front seven and still add some weapons that could, kind of change up their offense a little bit. I mean, I think it's a pretty good draft, but I would definitely trade back in this draft for more picks. I would resist the urge to pick at 11. They'll be a great player at 11. Somebody asked me, here we go, right on the screen here. YouTube number one, or YouTube number one critic. He says Jaunty in the first. Well, yeah, he's going to be there when the Niners pick, most likely at 11. And yeah, you know what?
They still have Christian McCaffrey, just so everybody knows.
They still have Christian McCaffrey, but you don't know about McCaffrey. And Gianti's an awesome player.
Right.
But I don't think as I just said, I think there's so many good running backs. And because there's so many good running backs, I wouldn't take Gianti in the top 10. But he is an awesome player. And I think he's a NFL Pro Bowl caliber running back. So it's a very safe pick. The only thing is like, I think a guy like that, I would rather have if I'm ready to win right now. If I already have a team built, I want to add that guy. The Niners were maybe in this position a year or two ago. Right now, they need to build. They need to build up their offensive and defensive lines and rebuild their linebacking core and rebuild their wide receivers and give themselves. I mean, they need a tight end. They need a wide receiver. They need a running back. They need a couple offensive linemen, as you said. I think they need defensive linemen. They need a couple linebackers. They need a couple corners. They need a free safety. They got a lot of needs. So I would say trading back is probably the route.
Yeah, unless if I'm the 49ers, I got to know from Trent 100%. Again, I know what John Lynch said But that doesn't mean that Trent is coming back, because you know what was funny about that, and I'm sure you've talked about the press conference. But in one breath, Kyle says to the woman who had the rambling question about Dre Greenlaw that, well, geez, I've just been in meetings the whole time. I don't know what we're going to do. I haven't talked to anybody about anything. But then the other side of things, John Lynch said, no, we're keeping 𝐷𝐵𝐿 Samuel and we're keeping Trent Williams. Well, wait a minute. You just said that you don't know about Dre Greenlaw because you've been in meetings, but you do know about Trent Williams and you do know about '𝐷𝐵𝐿 Samuel.
There's so much.
No, you don't. Like you've been in meetings. You don't know that. So the only thing they know is they're releasing Hargrave. They know that, and we knew that when they restructured the contract. So that's done. Greenlaw, they don't know, because Greenlaw could ask for more than a 1-year prove-it deal, which the 49ers, I don't think, are in a position to give. They don't.
That's an interesting one, too, because Mayoko has made it seem like he thinks the Niners, like, there's not going to be much of a market for Greenlaw and that they will be able to get him back on a 1-year prove-it deal. I'm very skeptical of that. I think he's going to have a much larger market than people think, but I could be wrong. We'll see.
But I don't think you are wrong, because what tends to happen is when let's say that you're just anybody who's out there as far as has a 49ers, let's say Robert Saleh doesn't get the DC job or doesn't want the DC job, or let's say the Raiders hire him. What do you think Robert Saleh is going to do? He's going to go get Dre Greenlaw, and somebody's going to overpay for him, because that's what desperate bad teams do. So I'm with you that I think Dre is going to come back. But he's got to realize that you played half a game this year. We're not in a position to give you a multi-year deal with a bunch of money. You're just going to have to prove it. But if a team that's as desperate as the Raiders, or I don't know, the Titans, or some of these bad teams, and says, we got to get some players on this team, and they offer him 2 or 3 years, the 49ers are not going to do that. They're not in a position to do that. So I don't mean to go down a road of Dre Greenlaw now. What I'm pointing out here is they don't know anything yet that they're going to be able to do, because they're still figuring out from a financial standpoint. Kyle was in meetings, John was in meetings, and now they came out and said, well, we don't know what we're going to do with Dre, but we do know that Trent's coming back, or we do know that 𝐷𝐵𝐿's coming back. They don't know that. And so people have to realize that it used to be that lying season was just around the draft or free. It's all the time now, because they really don't know, because what Parag and the bean counters and the money people are going to do is they're going to say, okay, here's what we got. And now you prioritize, because they don't even know what they're working with yet, so that when they get that, then they'll be able to figure it out. And then, like you just pointed out on Dre, it just takes one team. So what if one team says, we are going to give him 3 years. He is coming off an Achilles, but it's okay. We think he's going to come back. Niners aren't giving him 3 years. So then that was done. 𝐷𝐵𝐿 Samuel's a 4th wide receiver on this team. They're not paying him $24 million next year to be a 4th wide receiver. They know that. He's not coming back. There's no way. There's no chance he's coming back.
The way they talked about 𝐷𝐵𝐿, though, it sounds like they're going to try to trade him. They're going to try to, get somebody to give them something.
What's he worth? What's he worth to you? What's 𝐷𝐵𝐿 worth?
I would say a 5th or a 6th.
Yeah,
he's not worth anything more.
Conditional.
Yeah,
I mean, they don't have a lot of leverage with him.
Maybe a 6th round pick, but even so, it's like if you really factor in the contract, he's probably not even worth that. But there might be one thing about 𝐷𝐵𝐿 that's unique is he is in many ways a one of one. I mean, there aren't that many guys like him. So if you really love what he brings to the table, you could look at him from afar and say, hey, man, we'd love to have that guy. And you know what? I'll say this. You saw the good. We've seen the good and the bad of 𝐷𝐵𝐿. The good is, man, and if he wants to, he can dial it up for any one game. The downside is the next 3 weeks he can't play because he's always hurt. He's then hurt. Like he looked great in the Miami game.
Right, the game when they were out of it.
But then, he was sore as hell coming out of that game. He didn't really do much after that.
You mean the game after he dropped the ball that cost him the season against the Rams?
Yeah, well, I mean, the other one is you're a captain on the team and you're putting your hands on, the place you're yelling at the place kicker. It's like, and it's like, you're not going that good, So, I mean, I don't, to me, his whole thing was just a little tired. He's just not as good as he used to be. He's not as fast as he used to be. But I think they kind of positioned it like, we don't need to cut him. We may want to, if you want him, come trade for him.
Right. Maintain his leverage kind of a thing, right?
Yeah.
So that if you do trade him, you're not going to say that.
If you're a draft fan, I would say this is probably the best website that I've found for the draft. It's called drafttech.com. And then it has these boards and it was like by position, and you can see all the players that are potentially, on the board at a particular position. This is running back right now. And I just wanted to show you this list because this list is stacked. I mean, Ashton Gianti is a star, right? Omarion Hampton from North Carolina is a tremendous back, really great contact balance, amazing player. Travion Henderson is a star. I mean, he's probably going to go in the second round or third round. Quinshon Judkins, the Ole Miss transfer who's at Ohio State right now, star. I mean, he's just awesome. He runs through you. He's a tremendous player. This kid 𝐃𝐨𝐽 from ASU is a Sacramento kid.
Catch and run. He can catch it too.
I mean, he's just like he's like your Juice replacement. He's kind of a better version of the guy they had from Missouri in camp this summer.
Oh yeah, the kid signed with the Rams.
Yeah, he's like a better version than that.
Yeah.
But then down the list, Ollie Gordon from Oak State. Awesome.
Bro, if he'd have come out last year, he'd have been probably a first round pick. Oklahoma State had a terrible year, and he had a bad year behind a bad line. And if somebody's going to pick him up this year in like the third or fourth round, and he's going to be a superstar for him. He would have been a first rounder.
They have him going 94. That's in the third round.
I'm telling you, he's going to be good.
Nick Singleton had 3 touchdowns the other day. He's 230 pounds and he runs fast. He's exciting. Devin Neal is super fast for Kansas. Big play star kind of potential. Raheem Sanders from South Carolina is a huge back. Tremendous player. All these guys are good. Dylan Sampson from Tennessee just signed with Doug Hendrickson and Wasserman Group down there in Southern Cal. He is a hell of a player. Jarquez Hunter from Auburn is good. Donovan Edwards from Michigan is good. Somebody in the chat, like 10 minutes ago, just threw Khalil Mullings, the Michigan, back, who's just a monster. He's just a horse. They have him here. They've listed as number 154. Dude, Taj Brooks from Texas Tech. They list him here at 5'10", 230. He is a bowling ball of a running back. He's tremendous. I mean, he's really a good running back. Damian Martinez from Miami's good. Katron Allen from Penn State's never fumbled in his entire life. He is a hell of a player. Some of these guys I don't know. I haven't watched all these guys.
God, look where they have NTN, man. I mean, that guy.
Yeah, Marcus Yarns from Delaware is a player. Bashul Tootin from Vatek is a player. Jaquindon Jackson from Arkansas, the big back from Arkansas. He's a player. Etienne, they have 29th rated running back. Yeah, he's super electric. He's very fast.
Yeah.
We're not even done. Mario Anderson from Memphis is kind of a bow-legged back who transferred to Memphis this year. He is a tremendous player. Going even further down the line, if you watch Utah, Micah Bernard is a hell of a player. If you watch Ole Miss, Ulysses Bentley IV is got great home run speed. Two of my favorite backs in all of college football are their 39th and 40th running back. Quentin Cooley from Liberty. He sat out the bowl game.
Beefy, 5'7", 220.
5'7", 220 with you should see this guy's contact balance. You can't knock this guy off his feet. It's a most amazing thing. And then Montrell Johnson from Florida is just awesome. I mean, he is an explosive, super fast. He's a home run hitter. Jalen White, this guy down here from Georgia Southern, is a tremendous back. He runs a little upright, but he's tremendous. So I'm just saying this is a loaded.
Well, that's kind of what you were talking about too. When it comes to backs, you just don't need to take one in the first round. I mean, I love the kid from Boise State. He's going to be a star. There's no doubt. If the Raiders didn't need so many things, they're such dopes for letting Josh Jacobs go. I mean, Jacobs was great today. It was the best thing that was going for the Packers today. He completely changed their running game. James Jones Jones is a nice player. Aaron Jones, goes over to Minnesota. Jacobs is a lot better. So I'm not, look, he was a first round pick. You get a first round running back. They're really good. That's fine. But Kyle's not going to take a first round back, nor do they need to. They're 3 deep at the position. It's not the backs that are the problem. There was a stat, and I'm sure you saw it in the game. I think it was the Philly Green Bay game. Saquon Barkley, until he contact, it's over 2 yards. It's like 2.2 yards before he even gets touched. That's his offensive line. So, look, you can have the best back in the world. If he doesn't have an offensive line, unless he's Barry Sanders, he's not going anywhere. So the 49ers, especially inside, they want to bust you inside. Aaron Banks isn't coming back. They need a left guard, and Brendel's on the ground too much, and he's just not big enough. They got him at 30 years old. He was a journeyman. Had come over from Miami. He'd been with 3 or 4 different teams. I give him a ton of credit for they maxed out in getting as much as they could out of Jake Brendel. But it's time to get a powerful center that can move people. They haven't had one of those since when? Forever. They need to get a center and a left guard, and you put that next to Pooney at right guard, and now you're cooking with gas, and you can run the ball. And you mentioned this a little bit earlier. How many times this year did they get stuffed on 3rd and 1? My God, over the last couple of years, they couldn't get a yard. Now go back to the NFC Championship game against the Rams when Eric Weddle went over the top. It's like a yard. You have to get a yard. They just in the last couple of years they haven't been able to do it. So they need a big, powerful center, and they need a left guard that can move people. You put that next to Pooney, and all of a sudden now you got something in the running game. Because look, I don't know. McCaffrey's coming back from a bad injury, but Mason's a north-south runner. They're fine. They can find a back later on. That's what the Shanahans have done their whole life, is finding backs, either free agents or late in the draft. They're fine. They got to open some holes, man. They don't do it.
It's time to start getting real about what the job really is going to entail. I mean, for example, Philadelphia took Mekhi Becton and put him at right guard. Right. He's been fantastic. He's just a gigantic right guard. Huge body. The Pro Bowl fullback, or the All-Pro fullback this year, is Patrick Ricard. He's a 300-pound offensive lineman.
Yeah.
Who's playing fullback. So, I mean, that's the All-Pro fullback, is a 300-pounder. I'll tell you a guy that I would totally draft, get an extra 7th round pick. That Florida defensive tackle, Desmond Watson, who's 6'5", 450. He's 6'5", 450. Well, no.
He's got to lose about, 100 or 60?
But, I mean, snap the ball and just come out of your stance and just move forward. I mean, this guy blocks out the sun.
Right.
I mean, I'm just saying, some of these, look at Philly right now. Philly's got they've got Mailata at left tackle, Landon Dickerson at left guard, Cam Jurgens, who's about 310 pounds, at center.
He's going to the Pro Bowl, and everybody was all about Kelce last year. The dude just replaces him like it's nothing.
And then Mekhi Becton is just a house at right guard, and Lane Johnson at right tackle. I mean, that's the 49ers need to build a big physical. No, they don't have to go with Desmond Watson. That's almost like a joke. But I mean, I'll say this: the Alabama guard. That's every year Bama and Georgia and LSU, they always have great players every year. So it's hard to know like who's legit, who's not. Alabama's got a guard this year named Tyler Booker, and he is just one of the biggest road grading offensive guards I think I've ever seen. This guy is just an absolute body mover in the run game. And that's the kind of guy that you need, at guard. They got to invest in at least, they got to come out of this draft with a couple of good offensive linemen, either, starters or future starters, and invest in this offensive line. And a lot of these guys have to be bigger guys.
Well, you mentioned that the reason I'm all over a center is because I don't know what Brendel is tipping the scales at. It's not more than 285, 290. I mean, they bring in Jurgens. He's 6'3", 325. Frank Ragnow is the center for the Lions. You start looking at these teams, they have dominant pivots in the middle. You've got to move people in the middle, man. And Jake Brendel just doesn't do it. And whether it's how many times did Brock, and that's the way to beat the 49ers. Brock is just over 6 feet tall. What does he not like? He doesn't like pressure up the middle. That's just what it is he's getting too much pressure out of the middle. He's having to move to the outside. There's all these different factors. But the fact is that in the middle of the offensive line, there was too much push for the defense. And then when they were trying to run the ball between the tackles, it got collapsed so many times this year. That's all I can remember is the interior of the line. And then I don't think they're bringing Banks back unless it's just a screaming team deal. Even then, I don't think so. But Brendel's, like I said, he maxed out his career. Good job for him. But he just doesn't move people. And how many times did you see him on the ground this year? They need to get with modern times and get a 320, 325-pound center that can move, like Linderbaum of Baltimore. They took him in the first round a couple of years ago. Like these young centers that are bigger, can move. You got to have one of those, man.
Also, the Niners have completed an interview with Jeff Modkins for the team's special teams coordinator position. Modkins is a 29-year-old coach. He serves as an assistant special teams coach for the Lions under Dave Phipp. So he's done well since the Lions special teams unit's been good since he's been there. So I don't know. He it's an interesting. He's got a tie to the 49ers because he's the son of former Niner offensive coordinator Curtis Modkins. So Niners looking for a new special teams coordinator, and we'll see if Jeff Modkins is the guy. Who do you want for the defensive coordinator? Who do you think it's going to be? Is it Robert Saleh? Is it Ulbrich? Is it Gus Bradley? Is it Lou Anarumo? Is there somebody that you think comes to mind? Should they stay with the wide nine? Should they dump the wide nine for a 3-4?
Well, first of all, I really liked Kyle's answer because he's always been so steadfast in keeping the same defense. And so many things are progressing on the defensive side of the ball in terms of different looks and things. It just used to be, we're going to do what we're going to do. And then, we're going to be so good that you're not going to be able to deal with us. And now he understands in the era of Mike McDonald and Brian Flores and all these guys who are doing really creative things defensively, that they've got to be a little bit different in that way. But to answer your question, I'll ask you a question back. I don't think that Robert Saleh is going to get a job this year. I think that he could in a couple of years. But even though the Jets are a complete dumpster fire, I just think that most teams are going to say he needs a mental reset. And I think that he's going to be a defensive coordinator for a couple of years. He's going to talk to the Raiders this week. I know he talked to Jacksonville. He's a hot commodity, and I think people want to talk to him. But I just don't think teams are going to go, okay, Jets, we know it's a dumpster fire, but we're going to be our head coach. I think most people think he needs a cooling off period. And if that's the case and he's out there and he does want to work, and he wouldn't have talked to the 49ers, I don't think, if he didn't want to work, is there any other candidate but Robert Saleh if he wants the job? Why would you not give it to Robert Saleh if he wants the job and if he's passionate? If I'm him, look, I'm laying on a beach. I'm making $20,000 a day from the Jets, and the money gets offset. So he's going to basically work for free as a defensive coordinator of the 49ers, so I wouldn't be down with that. But he's a junkie, so he's going to want it. So if he wants it, is there any other candidates if he wants it to you?
Well, I mean, Shanahan said he's open to a scheme change, but is he? Because
No.
if he is, does that mean that Chris 𝐃𝐨𝐬𝐽 sticks around?
Right.
I think what they're not telling you is that they like Chris and they want to stay with the wide nine, and they would love Saleh because Saleh would check all the boxes. He has, they know about his work ethic. They know, as far as continuity, the relationships with the players, and he would keep Chris as his D-line coach, and they would keep their wide nine that they like, as their scheme. So I think, Saleh is the absolute number one choice for sure. Because I do believe that.
You brought up the wide nine. That's a great point by you. Philly doesn't run that anymore because that's
nobody does.
That's Vic Fangio. So yeah, nobody runs that anymore. So look, I'm not saying that you can't run a scheme that no one
does.
Yeah, Schwartz does in Cleveland.
Yeah,
but
Schwartz.
Not many people do. And I mean, they did it because they liked what Philly did with it. But then Philly brings in Vic, and they're not running it. So and again, you can run whatever you want if you think that that's going to work. I don't know that 𝐃𝐨𝐬𝐽 is going to be around because if people forget, it was Jim Washburn who was the father of the wide nine, and 𝐃𝐨𝐬𝐽 learned under him and all those kind of things. But I just think that we're about, I wouldn't say 2 full years, Krug, but about a year and a half that this has been going on, and a lot of teams have been gashing them with the runs the way they did, and they really haven't stopped it for about a year and a half, almost 2 years now. The beginning of last year, they were okay, and then teams figured it out. And they ran that wide zone stuff against them for a ton. They never figured out how to stop it. They weren't better against it this year. So, yeah, if I was Kyle, I think it might be time to ditch that and to play a more traditional type. And you've talked about this before, even a 3-4 type of thing. whatever the case may be, because what they've been doing is not working. And the backbone of the 49ers, there's two things, and we've talked about it. It's running the football, possessing the ball, and playing defense. And one of the reasons why, I bitch and moan all the time about Kyle not going for it on fourth down, and I don't want him to be Dan Campbell, but I want him to be a little bit more risky with it, a little less conservative, but he has no trust in his defense. And that's part of the reason why he's so conservative, because right now, what everybody talks about complementary football, if you don't trust your defense, you don't trust your offensive line. Last year at the end, you certainly didn't trust the quarterback. What the hell are you going to do here? So it goes back to
this, though. I mean, you say he doesn't trust the defense, but, it's funny. In these situations in the fourth quarter when their offense can't stay on the field, he'll often just call the play that he wants to call. Like if he wants to call a run, he'll call a run. And if they don't get the first down, he'll put it on his defense. He'll put his defense back on the field. He won't take that chance on offense. He'll just do a much more conservative type play call at the end of the games. And then if he can get the first down, great. But if he can't, he'll just put his defense back out there.
Right.
And unfortunately, his defense has proven to be fallible many, many times in the fourth quarter this year. So I don't know if it's the great game plan. I personally think that the problem is not the wide nine. The problem is that you had 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞 and Greenlaw and Warner. They were all younger and better. You don't have any of those guys now except for Warner. And Greenlaw didn't play. Warner was hurt, played with a broken ankle. 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞 is still playing incredible football for Houston, by the way. So you just lost your special linebackers, and you had really special interior defensive linemen, and you got to have special interior defensive linemen in a wide nine, and they just don't now. They've just got guys. Collins is okay. Elliott's okay. I mean, Evan Anderson was a nice little find, but he's just okay. They don't have that gigantic war daddy monster, and I think that's probably where they need to start the rebuild.
Right.
Even though they need an offensive tackle and they need defensive ends and they need linebackers, to me, if I'm picking at 11 or if I'm starting my draft, I'm probably thinking defensive tackle in the first round. But
trade out of the first round. I mean, other than Bosa.
If you could, I would trade out of the first round.
I mean, just about all the great picks except for Bosa in this era of John and Kyle are after the first round. I mean, Bosa's number 2. Of course, you're going to take him. I still give him credit, but they did. But when I say this, people bring up McGlinchey or something, and he started today for the Broncos. He didn't get to his second contract. Trade 3 first-round picks, so there's 3 blown first-round picks there. I mean, what do you do? I like Pearsall, but you and I just had a conversation that maybe Lad McConkey is better. I mean, outside of Bosa, go second through. I would take their picks 2 through 7 more than I would 1. I mean, my God, man. Trade out of the first round.
By the way, it's funny. Sometimes somebody will put something on Twitter that make you think of something that you also thought. I was watching the kicker Zane Gonzalez walk in tonight, and I thought, man, this guy looks nervous. And sure enough, Clay Travis this is the most nervous I've ever seen a kicker before a game-winning kick.
Oh, I've seen way worse than that.
But look at this. Look how many times this guy brushes his hair before putting on his helmet.
And it's like he's got this really short hair. So
short hair. Let's count the number of times he brushes his hair here. 1, 2.
He looks like Steph Curry a little bit.
You see it? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
It's like, bro,
8,
your hair is
9,
so short, it's
10,
not
11,
even moving.
12.
Oh, yeah. Look at his face. He does look nervous.
13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18.
Oh, my God. Is
18 brushes of his hair.
And it doesn't move.
And he banged it off the bar. It went, but he banged it off the bar. And look at that hair. That could be spray paint.
Yeah, it's seriously. That's just a nervous tick. Is that what that is? It's almost like he just. It's almost like he did like. It's almost like he did like 3 lines of coke, and he was like, had a nervous twitch going on or something there. Not that I would know anything of that, but
yeah.
My God, man, what is that? I didn't even see that. Wow,
that's Hunter during the White House tour. Oh man,
my God, I didn't even see that. Wow,
that was that's nervous. I saw that. I was like, oh my God. By the way,
that'd be how terrible. By the way, if you're Tampa, how terrible a way is that to end your season? A doink, you lose off a doink like that.
Oh, I know.
Oh man.
Have you seen anybody in the playoffs that player-wise, that you just love for the draft? Because I found a guy for Texas that I just absolutely love.
You talking college football playoffs?
Yeah. And I'm gonna show you this one highlight. This linebacker who's projected to be like a day 3 linebacker for Texas, named David Benda.
Yeah, I know who he
And
is.
here he is, 33. And he came away with the interception against the Buckeyes in the third quarter. But this guy's so athletic. He's going to go late because he's 5'11", but he's just crazy athletic. Here he is. Will Howard, little play action, drops back to pass. David Benda. There you go.
Bro, 5'11" is what Ivan Pace is. I mean, how can a guy like Ivan Pace of the Vikings not get drafted? And he was from Cincinnati when Cincinnati was, playing in the playoffs and everything. It just tells you that the science is not exact. Oh, he's 5'11". What was Sam Mills, 5'9"? I mean, it's like, dude, dude can play. Dude can play, man.
What I would say to those people is the athleticism that it takes to play in the NFL these days is so crazy that it doesn't necessarily matter. You need to be a freakish athlete, okay? Yeah. It doesn't really matter if you're 5'11" or 6'1".
I agree.
If you're a freakish athlete, you're a freakish athlete. I'm 6'1". So what? I'm not playing in the NFL. It has nothing to do with 6'1". It has to do with being a freakish athlete. Man. And this guy, David Benda, he's 5'11", but he's a freakish athlete, and that's what it takes to play at the next level. So anyway, David Benda.
I will say that I've loved the college football playoff. All the games haven't been great, and
the ratings have been awful.
Yeah, they have been. It's amazing. ASU Texas was a good game. Obviously, Penn State Notre Dame was a good game. Which, by the way, I don't know if you saw that. I'm sure you've talked about, but look, we're all on the air a ton of hours, and so we just say stuff, and if it doesn't come true, it doesn't come true. But have you ever seen anything as bad as Greg McElroy right before Penn State goes out there and Drew Lar? He's not a bad quarterback, but like you said, he needs another year back. He'll probably go into the portal and make like $5 million with somebody. but there's 30 seconds left in that game. Your own 20-yard line. If it was Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid would have took a knee. And they have the kid throw, and then his excuse after the game was, "Well, I was trying to throw it away." You threw a slant pattern. What do you mean you throw it away to the crowd, man? So the Notre Dame kid picks it, and they win the game with a field goal. And it was like, there's James Franklin has like a 1-18 record or something against top 20 teams. It's like, dude, there's 30 seconds left in the game. You're at your own 20. You actually have the better personnel. Just take it to overtime. Like sometimes you're just sitting there going, what in the hell are you doing? It's unbelievable. But anyway, that was a good game. But outside of that, like you said, there just has not been enough. Like I thought Oregon and Ohio State was going to be a burner. And then Ohio State's up in that game like 34-0. And you're like, this was supposed to be the best game of all the games. There just hasn't been enough good games. Even though I like the concept of it.
I've enjoyed it. I really like it, but I understand, I don't know. I mean, is it the lack of, let's just be honest about this. Where is the greatest passion for college football? It's in the Southeast.
Right.
So look at the playoff. Where's the SEC team? You've got A&M.
And Texas is not really an SEC team because that's not Texas. Texas is Texas, but you're talking about Alabama and Georgia. That's the SEC. That's the true SEC. Texas just joined this year. Technically, they're SEC, but Texas is Texas.
Right. Yeah.
The SEC is LSU is SEC. Right. Too. I've told this story.
If Alabama was in it, don't you think the ratings would be a whole lot better?
Oh, huge. Like Auburn, Alabama. The blue bloods of the SEC is what we're talking about. Not that Texas. I mean, I'm a conspiracy theorist, so I think Texas got in over ASU because they're Texas, and I believe in those kind of things, but. So, that's going to give you some numbers. But like you said, I guarantee you next year, and everyone's going to bitch and moan, but it's a business. Somehow Alabama's going to get in. Somehow Georgia, no matter what kind of season they have. Notre Dame is supposed to bring bigger numbers maybe than what they've brought. And really, you always have an opinion about Notre Dame. Like you either love or hate Notre Dame. I happen to hate Notre Dame. I'm going to watch it because, it is two blue bloods in Notre Dame and Ohio State. But I am surprised that there's not better numbers, but you hit it right on the head. the SEC is just a different deal. And to the SEC, Texas really isn't the SEC. It's not like Georgia fans will tune in to see Bama. Bama fans will tune in to see Georgia or LSU or Auburn or any of those other teams. This is their first year in the SEC. Nobody thinks that Texas is like blue blood SEC school.
Yeah. Also, I mean, it's funny, like those early games. Like, I thought it was interesting watching. I liked watching Notre Dame in South Bend against Indiana.
Yeah, that was cool.
I enjoyed that. I liked watching Penn State at home against SMU. I liked watching Texas at home against Clemson. I liked watching the Buckeyes in Columbus. But here's the thing. When you take these teams and you put them at home, and all the games that we're used to seeing late in the college football season are all neutral site games, it's almost impossible for any of these teams to go on the road against these powerhouse teams late in the year when you know what I mean, with the crowds howling.
No way. Indiana, they had
look at the scores in those games. Ohio State beat Tennessee 42-17.
Yeah.
SMU got beat 38-10. Texas beat Clemson 38-24. Notre Dame was won by 10 over Indiana.
And that game was not even that close. I mean, they got some points
Indiana
later.
Had 14 in the fourth quarter.
They were smoking them.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was 20.
No, there was none of those games
going to the fourth. Yeah, so I mean, what I'm saying is just that I love the atmosphere, but I don't see how the road teams are ever going to win in those scenarios in college. It's a tall ask to ask a team to go into Happy Valley or Columbus. That's why what Michigan did by beating the Buckeyes in the Big House was so impressive. That was so impressive to be able.
What they're going to do moving on, because they put Arizona State as a 4 and Boise as a 3 and all that. They're not going to do that. They're not going to give the auto buy to these teams that just win these conferences. Like win the Mountain West or whatever the hell Boise's in. Like, come on, man. I don't care if you're 11-2 or whatever. That's not an SEC schedule. So the one thing they're going to do is there's not going to be any auto buys, and they're going to, like you said, they're going to put the Boise's and the ASU's and all of those teams in the first round. Like, hey, we got you in. Now you're going to go to Penn State or, like you said, Notre Dame or Alabama. You're going to get smoked. And now the final 8 teams are going to be the big boys. Because I think one of the things was, and even though Arizona State gave Texas a game, nobody else really did. I mean, all the teams
that was the best game. That was Notre Dame and Penn State was a pretty good game.
Yeah, right.
And but other than that,
and that was because 𝐶𝐿𝐴 was just so good. I mean, 𝐶𝐿𝐴 just said, "Okay, we're not going to lose." I mean, he was just.
Yeah, I mean, they scored 23 points in the fourth quarter in overtime.
Yeah, he was unreal.
But
that was really it.
It's and it's also, I mean, it has built some of these people into bigger name people, like Travion Henderson and Judkins and Howard and Riley Leonard. They're a little higher profile than they would have been normally because they've played in some high profile games. What do you think of Notre Dame overall, as far as do you think Marcus Freeman's going to jump to the pros? There's a lot of talk that teams want to interview him. He is an impressive coach. He's a former collegiate linebacker. And then what do you think of Riley Leonard? Because I mean, he's Cowherd compared him to Josh Allen. And it's like, dude, he's not Josh Allen. He doesn't have anything close to Josh Allen's arm.
We've never seen a Josh Allen.
Josh. But don't compare anybody to Josh Allen, but certainly not Riley Leonard. But I do like Riley Leonard as far as day 3 backup quarterback looking for somebody. There's some moxie there. There's some special traits about Riley Leonard.
No, he's had. Look, I don't know that anybody has raised their value more than him. Now, the difference, as you well know, with the NFL is then you got to go through, the whole process of the draft and everything else. But in terms of a guy, you mentioned this with Jayden Daniels, 2 totally different style quarterbacks. But what I'm saying is the moxie and the winning and the, and taking over late, and he's run a little bit and made some good throws. And so, yeah, there is something. And this is why I like this playoff other than just a bowl game, because what you get to see with this is here's a player that's got the it. And it may not always look great. Like Jeff Garcia it wouldn't look great with Jeff Garcia, but if you got into a tight game, Jeff Garcia just made plays, and Riley Leonard kind of reminds me of that, not much more than Josh Allen. Josh Allen's just a big dude with a massive arm and, those kind of things. But it does give you kind of like, I'm going to step up in a big game. And a bowl game is big. And obviously when you had a 4-team playoff, it was big. But you're seeing it week after week. You mentioned Riley Leonard, and I know you're a big fan of his. He is going to get elevated in the eyes of scouts as long as he has a decent combine and process and everything else, because they saw in these games in the playoffs that he's a gamer, and you can't really measure that until you see it.
I know. No, and there's something to be said for that. And he's pretty athletic at 6'4", 220 pounds. He doesn't have much of an arm, but man, he sure made a number of throws, and it'll be interesting to see if he can get it done against the Buckeyes. I don't think so. I'll take the Buckeyes.
They
Buckeyes.
They are.
Jeremiah Smith is just an unbelievable receiver, and they don't even need him. He could literally catch no footballs, and they could still dominate.
If he came out this year, what's that kid? 6'4", 225.
Oh, he's amazing.
If that kid came out this year, he'd probably be the first receiver taken. I mean, his physical skills are so ridiculous.
One last thought on Brock Purdy before we call it quits. Fred Warner, Niner linebacker, has publicly endorsed Brock Purdy as the team's long-term solution, predicting plenty of Super Bowl rings in his future. That's interesting. This is the quote. Brock Purdy, he's the man. He will be the Niners quarterback for a very, very long time with plenty of Super Bowl rings on his hand, Fred Warner said on ESPN NFL about Brock Purdy. Huge endorsement for Purdy. I thought my biggest takeaway from the Kyle John presser was just how over the top John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan were, and effusive of their praise of Brock Purdy. John Lynch was like, Brock's going to be the quarterback here for a long, long time. And then Shanahan said, Brock's the only quarterback I want here as long as I'm here going forward.
It was almost uncomfortable how much Kyle went in on him.
I know, it was amazing. My takeaway on that, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, but here's my takeaway on that, is that they have to have exchanged some ideas contract-wise with his agent. And if his agent's ask was crazy, that I can't think they would have been so effusive in their praise. To me, that seems to be like a good indication that either they feel like they can get on the same page or they are on the same page with his agent.
I don't think there's any question. And this can't be a July, August, September thing. I understand what their general philosophy is with players, that they'll get it done and all those kind of things. They got burned by Brandon Ayuk, so some of their philosophy has to have changed from that experience. But also, they've got to get on the same page. And some people, I've said this before, and people don't understand, and you know this. You don't throw with Brandon Ayuk for an offseason, and it shows. They never got on the same page this year, even though they've been on the same page in the past. Same with Ricky Pearsall. If I'm his agent, he can't throw. He can't do anything. I mean, I'm not saying he can't throw. I'm saying he can't do any, whether they are 49ers activities, whether they are getting everybody together and throwing down in San Diego like all these quarterbacks do with all the receivers. He can't do any organized activities like that until his contract is done. Now, he can. I'm not saying technically he can't, but what I'm saying is his agent won't allow it, because if there's any injury there, then he's screwed, and we're talking $50 to $60 million. So they have to get this deal done so that he's set for life before he can do anything. So there's no throwing with Pearsall officially. There's no throwing with Ayuk. There's none of that stuff. So it even goes beyond the contract that he's going to sign with the team. They got to get this thing done ASAP. So to your point, I think they have. It was crazy because John Lynch was just talking purely, was asked a question about the contract. And then, like you said, Kyle was basically like, this is my son. I will never leave my son. I mean, it was just, my dad's never spoken in any kind of positive light like that about me. And I don't blame him, but still, it's like, wow, man. I mean, this, like, Kyle is just, if there was any question, and there's no better, we kind of flirted like, maybe Sam Darnold, maybe this guy, man. There's nobody out there anyway. So there's no other reason to say anything about Brock except for we want him back. But there's a difference between saying we want him back and God, I loved him deeply like a son and would give my own children away for Brock Purdy. I mean, my God, Kyle, he went in so far. It was like, there is no question that this deal is getting done. Crazy.
No, I know. It's funny though. You look at the quarterbacks in the playoffs. Herbert, round 1. Stroud, round 1. Wilson's a third rounder, but Jackson's a first. Nix is a first. Allen's a first. Love's a first. Hurts was a second, but Daniels was a first. Mayfield was a first. Darnold was a first. Stafford a first. Mahomes was a first. Goff was a first. You know what I mean? It's like, where's the 7th round guys? You don't see them that often, So what we're seeing with Brock Purdy is pretty unique, is pretty special. For sure. And, there's an awful lot of, debate back and forth because, people say, well, Herbert lost and, the Purdy camp saying, oh, he's better than Herbert. And the Herbert people saying, no, Herbert's better and this and that. What do you think? I mean, Justin Herbert obviously is central casting from a quarterback.
Yeah.
If it was a quarterback movie, you'd want to have him. But then at the same time, I mean, he had some boneheaded decisions in this game this weekend. 4 picks. Where are you with Herbert?
It was really easy when he had bad coaches around him to just say, well, if he gets better coaching around him, he's going to be better. But he's kind of gotten to this point where, look, nobody can deny the tools that he has. He may have, like, when you want to talk about Josh Allen, he can be Josh Allen. He's big. He's athletic. He can throw the ball through a wall. He's got everything you have, but he just is kind of stagnated. He's just gotten to that point. It's kind of what you and I were just talking about with Riley Leonard. There's certain guys who are leaders on a team. There's certain guys that when they go onto the field, they're going to make plays. They're going to win games. Jaden Daniels did it tonight for Washington. Justin Herbert is not that kind of guy. You're throwing 4 interceptions in a playoff game. So guys become legends for what they do in the playoffs. Who cares a lot of times what they do, weeks 1 through 17, 18, whatever. You get into the playoffs, that's when we talk about you, and that's when you have a legacy, and that's when we remember the plays that you made. We can do it. We can, rarely do you remember a Montana play during the season, but you can mention 1,000 of them, in the playoffs and the plays that he made. So what play did Justin Herbert ever make? I mean, they played Jacksonville a few years ago, and it's not all on him, but what were they up 27-0 at the half? They lose to Jacksonville 31-27. You throw 4 interceptions against Houston. Harbaugh's your coach. He's pretty good. At some point, it becomes about you as a quarterback, and that's too much to blame on one guy. But there are teams who have that quarterback like Kansas City does with Mahomes, and they're not a dominant team despite the fact that they're 15-1. But when it counts, he makes plays, and it scares the hell out of you. Who's afraid of Justin Herbert when the game's on the line? For that matter, who's afraid of Brock Purdy when the game's on the line? You have to become that kind of quarterback to get the respect you deserve. Fine, do it 1 through 18, week 1 through 18. You have got to do it in the playoffs. That's when it matters. That's when anybody's going to remember.
It's funny too. It's like, there's so many people that are like, what? Brock Purdy beat Jordan Love in the playoffs last year. He beat Jared Goff in the playoffs last year. Packers, by the way, their last 9 playoff possessions with Jordan Love, 4 interceptions, 2 missed field goals, 2 3-and-outs, and 1 punt. 1 other punt.
He was terrible.
I mean, Jordan Love. A lot of people love Jordan Love, and he looks the part. And there's times where he can make some highlight plays. He's definitely got good physical ability for sure. But maybe it's his lack of weapons around him because I cited that before. But he wasn't great tonight. He was not great.
Well, I think too that let's go back to Brock and his contract for a second. He's not going to get the $65 million or something that Dak Prescott got, but he's not going to get anything less than 55 because that's where Herbert is. That's where Trevor Lawrence is. That's where Jordan Love is. That's where Tua Tagovailoa is. He's not getting less than those guys. So one of the reasons I am optimistic that a deal will get done soon is that the parameters are pretty much there. It's not like it's just there's this wide variance in what Brock should get paid. And don't confuse that with I think Brock's going to give some kind of a discount. He's not. His agent won't allow it. The players union won't allow it. It doesn't work that way. The player could want that, and unless you're Brady and it's already established, when you're coming up for your first big contract, they want you to get every dime for the guys that are behind you. But it's pretty simple to see where this number is. It's between 50, 55. It's going to be something in that range. Now, having said that, it's how it's structured. It's how much is guaranteed, which is weird nowadays. It's all these different factors. But in terms of the AAV And really, the amount of money that's guaranteed, you can look at these 4 or 5 guys that we just discussed, Herbert and Love especially, and say that's where it is. It's not overly complicated. The check's big and the numbers are big and all those kind of things. But honestly, it should get done relatively quickly if both sides want to do it, because it's really not that hard to figure out. And I'm not a math guy, but it's really not that hard to figure out where Brock should be.
No. I mean, Prescott's at the top at 60, and you got Mahomes at 45. And I would say Brock probably, because of the thing is, he's signing in the present, so it's going to be a high number. But I would say it's probably between 50 and 55. That would be my guess of where it's going to wind up. And who knows? But that would be my guess. As far as tomorrow night, who do you like tomorrow night? Rams, Vikings.
And I don't hate the Rams like I hate the Dodgers or the Lakers or something like that, but I think Minnesota, and we did see some cracks the last time I was out in they played in Darnold's game. He just wasn't as good last time out, but I think that Minnesota is good. I don't think they're a fluke. I think Minnesota beats the Rams relatively easy, and I do think they're going to give Philadelphia hell. I could see a Minnesota-Detroit NFC Championship game, because I like Philly. They're really good in a lot of ways. I don't think that Jalen Hurts is playing at the top of his game, but I also think that if Matthew Stafford goes crazy, they could do that. And I like the Rams' young defense, but I think Minnesota's going to be too much. So I'd go. I don't want to jump ahead of myself. I think the Vikings tomorrow night.
Yeah, I like the Vikings too. If this game were in LA, I'd give LA more of a shot. But
right,
in the neutral site, give me Minnesota. Minnesota's the better team, better team. Though I will say this: the Rams, have a veteran quarterback, the better quarterback, and they've got a coach that's won a Super Bowl. The moment won't be too big. It's not going to be an easy game, but I like Minnesota to win.
No, but you're right, and that's the one thing. Stafford, that would be the scariest thing for me with Minnesota. Is Minnesota across the board should have the better team, but you mentioned this earlier, and you're right. A lot of times in the playoffs, it does come down to quarterback play. And to me, even though I have to say, even though I wasn't the biggest Darnold fan, he's had a hell of a year, and I didn't think he was capable of this. But we've seen Stafford too many times against the 49ers have an out-of-the-world game. And when you're talking about Puka and the type of things that they can do, if they can get some protection, they can be pretty good. And but another thing, Brian Flores is really good. Man. If they can somehow get Brian Flores, I love a creative defensive coordinator. It is sickening a little bit to watch the 49ers, especially this year, be as conservative as they were defensively, and then see a guy like Brian Flores confuse the hell out of teams game in and game out. I like that guy.
Let's hit a couple of these supers, and then we'll bolt. Bazzi Mian says Jesse Naylor thinks Jordan Love is better than Purdy. Your thoughts? I mean, Jordan Love's got big physical profile, right? He's a bigger guy, bigger body, 6'4", 220. He's got a bigger arm, better speed, had 25 touchdowns, 11 picks this year, 3,300 passing yards, had a better statistical year. It was kind of a weird year for Jordan Love, though. He had 11 interceptions, and that was going into like the middle of November. So he had a bunch of interceptions in the first half of the year. Then he did not throw another interception. He threw an interception on November 17th against the Bears. Starting with the Niner game, he went the Niner game, the Dolphin game, the Lions loss, the Seattle game, the New Orleans game, the Minnesota game, the Chicago game, and he didn't throw any interceptions, none. And then he comes out and he had 3 in the playoff game today. So, I think Brock Purdy makes better decisions. Jordan Love ended their year last year. Now, Brock Purdy also made some very questionable decisions this year. But Jordan Love ended their season last year with what? A late throw, blind, over the middle, off balance, really reckless play. And then throws a ton of picks, at least did in the first half of the year. Then seems to overcome it, gets into a real hot stretch. And then the bugaboo of interceptions bit him again today. I think Purdy overall is a little bit better processor, a little bit smarter, a little bit better decision maker. Love's a little bit better overall talent, athlete, arm strength. Purdy's quicker. Love's probably straight line faster. I prefer Purdy, but I think They're
Right.
both good young quarterbacks, in my opinion. How do you
Love had a
grade out Jordan Love versus Brock?
I don't think Love had a very good year, and as I said before, I think it's just teams catching up to guys, and they have to make adjustments. I think he has an off season of work ahead of him. The thing where I think Brock is better is Brock just made some poor decisions this year, and I think it's due to lack of playmakers and him thinking he had to do too much. He's going to rectify that and be more like he was in his first 2 years. Jordan Love has an issue at times with accuracy. And I don't know if you can fix accuracy. And again, that fourth down throw he had, guy on the sideline just standing there, and you lead him out of bounds when basically your season's on the line. I know it's one throw, but it's indicative of the way he played this year. And he's really athletic, and he has a whippy arm and all those kind of things, but he just makes a lot of dumb mistakes. And I know Brock made mistakes, but they were mistakes of trying too hard, doing too much, those kind of things that I think will be corrected. Jordan Love has some issues that I don't know if they're correctable.
I think it's a pretty good breakdown. To Big 25 says these playoff teams make the 49ers offense look so old and slow. Yeah, I mean, there's no question. The Niners need more speed, more dynamic playmakers, a bigger, more physical line. MLB Elias says Jaden Daniels becoming the NFC's Lamar Jackson. He looked great tonight. Tremendous kid. A lot of poise. To Big 25 says of the DC defensive coordinator names mentioned, Arumo's scheme is the best.
Yeah, and Arumo, the guy
get away from
wasn't Cincinnati.
The wide 9 BS. Well, Lou Anarumo has had times where he's coached a 4-3 scheme and times where he's coached a 3-4 scheme. So I think he kind of molds or melds his scheme to his talent. So I don't know exactly what kind of scheme he would bring. I think it's hard for me to see anybody saying to Nick Bosa, getting a. You stand up, remember
when Joey did that? It's like, I never want Nick Bosa going backwards. So a 3-4, I get it. I don't want Nick Bosa. You're doing the offense a favor. I always think that it kind of goes back to baseball. When you see the other dugout cheer when a guy gets removed from a game, that means you did the wrong thing. So when an offense sees Nick Bosa going in reverse and not forward, they're going, oh, thank God. Nick could never be a better guy in reverse than he would be coming forward. So in any scheme that Nick Bosa is going backwards, I'm against it.
I am as well. I mean, Nick's perfectly suited for a 4-3 scheme. Yeah. And to me, it's not about the scheme you play. It's, it really isn't. It's about how you play, not the scheme. Their regression has nothing to do with the wide 9. It has everything to do with they used to have a great D line. Now they have Bosa. They used to have a great linebacker core. Now they have Fred. They used to be deeper up front, and they're missing in the draft has hurt them, and their lack of depth, I think, is really what's glaring. Niner Matt 209 says so many critics on Purdy, but we'll stay quiet about Herbert and Love. Love is making $55 million a year. Yeah,
Herbert's getting barbecued, just so everybody knows. Herbert's getting crushed.
Yeah, all these guys though who are making $50 million plus are all at home. They're all at home. So, I mean, I'm not saying that if you make a lot, you can't win. But, I mean, Dak Prescott makes the most. He didn't make the playoffs. Joe Burrow makes over 50. He missed the playoffs. Jordan Love makes over 50. He's now at home. Trevor Lawrence makes over 50. He didn't make the playoffs. Tua makes over 50. He didn't make the playoffs. Do you see the trend here? Jared Goff makes over 50, and obviously he's still going and might win the Super Bowl. And now Herbert's out as well. He also makes over 50. So, the over 50 crew, I mean, I guess the question is this, John. That the best deal in a cap sport is the one that helps you win the best. I mean, if you're Brock Purdy, are you a winner if you get $100 million, but you never make the playoffs again? No. So it's not just about the dollar figure. It's about the dollar figure and the impact on the team that you're on. So it's like, I would wonder, like, I'm sure his agent would say more. That's his job. But what do you think that number is, that sweet spot where you're getting paid well, but the team is also getting enough of a discount so that they can compete with Mahomes. Because, I mean, if you're going to beat Kansas City, you got to beat Kansas. If you're going to win the Super Bowl, you got to beat Kansas City. And Mahomes is making $45 million a year. So it's going to be hard. And he's better than you. So it's going to be really hard to beat him if you're making 60 and he's making 45 and he's better than you.
I think what you just said is 100%. And I think this is why it scares a lot of fans, is that in the NFL, this is just the way it is. You have to pay good quarterbacks great money because there's not enough of them around. So Brock Purdy, not at the beginning, it's going to ramp up. So at some point, it's going to cost you something, but he's going to make the $55 million. But is he going to be good or great? And that's what you just said is hurting teams, is that Burrow's great, don't get me wrong, but Herbert at that money, so Herbert is costing you players. So he better make up for that. All those years that guys make all this money, like Mahomes makes up for it. Mahomes makes all this money, but you don't need to have as many great players when Mahomes around. Allen makes all that money, but Allen makes all these plays, and you don't need as many great players around. So if you have Brock Purdy, and I keep hearing that he needs all these great players around him, well, that's when you get hurt, because you are going to lose players because he makes so much money. So if he's not absolutely great, that's what kills your team. Jordan Love is not great. He's just being paid like it. That's where those problems come in, is that when a guy's being paid great, who's good, who's costing you other players, that hurts your team. And that's where I think a lot of people are nervous about Brock is he has to be paid great. That's just the job. All these people who don't want to pay Brock, who else are you going to pay? Okay, you let Brock go. You trade him. Who you getting? There is nobody. And that's the quandary that the league finds itself in. Unlike last year, for example, if they traded Ayuk, you find another Ayuk really easy, to be honest with you. But you can't find, there are certain positions. Trent Williams retires, you're up Schitt's Creek. You can't find a Trent Williams. You can't find a Nick Bosa. That's why they get paid. You can't find a quarterback. They made a mistake in paying Ayuk because running backs, you just showed a list of 50 running backs. Are you sure that I mean, I love Christian McCaffrey, but is that the best use of your money? So teams have to be smart that way, but they all find themselves in trouble when it comes to quarterbacks because there are so few, you have to pay them great money. But the problem becomes when the quarterback's good, not great, and it costs you players, that's when it kills your team.
Basically, once you start paying a quarterback big money, you better be really good at the draft.
Exactly. You got to get cheap labor.
And you better be good at the draft. Almost, you better be probably eager to trade back routinely. That better be your like modus operandi, is that you trade back, because you're going to always need great depth, especially as your roster gets better and you wind up paying these guys. But it is interesting. It's like if you look at what the Niners did in 21, 22, and 23 in the first 3 rounds of the draft, and what the Lions did in 21, 22, and 23 in the first 3 rounds of the draft, that speaks volumes as to why the Niners are not in the playoffs and why the Lions look like the Niners suddenly. You give Brad Holmes and his personnel department all the credit in the world. They've been spectacular.
Well, it goes back. That's the Trey Lance trade. I mean,
yeah.
Everybody thought that Brock Purdy made up for the Trey Lance trade. Well, when you don't have a first-round pick in 22 and you don't have a first-round pick in 23, and he also cost you a third-round pick, those players plus his pick, so that's 3 1s and a 3, those are starters, those are cheap labor, those are depth. So you had all these injuries this year for the 49ers. What were they lacking? Depth. Why don't they have any depth? Because they traded 3 1s and a 3 and spent another third-round pick on a kicker. So there's 3 1s and 2 3s. Would that help right now? Maybe.
Yeah. You think? That would be
maybe.
incredible. That's going to do it for us tonight. Thanks to Better for sponsoring the Krueg Show. This live stream is sponsored by Better, the official daily fantasy sponsor of the Krueg Show. Use Better to make daily fantasy lineups and win real money. Download the app. Make sure you use the promo code Niners to get your first deposit matched up to $200. Everyone who does automatically is entered into a drawing to win a free signed Ricky Pearsall jersey, which we will announce the winner on Super Bowl Sunday. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krueg Show. Pig and a Pickle.
Hey, before we go, wait a minute. At the beginning, I haven't seen one of these lately, but in the beginning, a lot of people were saying, what, birthday? We missed your birthday? When was it? Now, tomorrow, yesterday, what? See, there you go.
Today's the double nickel. Today,
come
55.
on. Are you
55.
serious?
55 today,
Dude.
double nickel. Yeah, today's the day.
If I had any kind of a singing voice, Krueg, I'd go Marilyn Monroe on you right now. Happy birthday to you, Krueg. That's awesome, dude. Today's what did you do? Did you do anything good? Did anybody get you a cake? Your kid's making money now. Did your kid buy you something finally?
Went on a little bit of a bike ride. I went to Lenardi's, and
that's a good store.
I like turkey.
Steaks?
So I know. Actually, I had turkey. We had turkey. We haven't had turkey in a while, except for Thanksgiving. So I made turkey
on your birthday. Wow,
I like turkey, and then I had a little berry pie.
Oh, nice.
Kids gave me a really nice card, and watched some football.
Today was a good day. Today was a good weekend, by the way. Super wild card weekend is pretty good.
A little bit of a little bike ride.
The weather was beautiful. My God, we're getting good weather.
The weather was springtime here. It was like it was mid-60s.
Last few days,
beautiful,
outstanding,
unbelievable,
dude. So, congratulations, a happy birthday, man.
Thanks, man.
Awesome.
Thanks, man.
I'll have to stop by. I was up in Napa not buying wine, but a bunch of booze. So I have to stop by your house and drop something at your door. Didn't know it was your birthday until I saw the people texting. I'm like, oh man.
Well, I did get a couple. I did see NFL weekends. I did get a couple Pliny's and flew down a couple of Pliny's.
There you go.
I do like slamming a couple nice.
That's nice.
Good beers. So yeah, it was good. It was good. It sucks that the Niners are out, but it makes it, where you can just kind of chill and watch it. As a fan.
You know what's funny though? It's I don't know if anybody else thought this. It's nothing against Washington, but nobody thought Washington was going to be in the playoffs. And I'm sitting there watching Washington at Tampa going, the Niners aren't better than these guys. I'm just going, they're not. Like,
Washington got lucky. Washington, the ball
hit
at
Tampa
Bears.
going, they're not better than Tampa?
Right. No, the Niners were a better team than they played this year, but they had a brutal schedule. They played like crap. They got into the game where if you really look at this, people would say this is a huge excuse, and it is. The Niners, Lynch and Shanahan are responsible for their, backslide. But if you do look at their schedule this year, the game that they absolutely had to have was that Seattle game at home.
Oh, yeah.
And that was the game where they had the least rest. Their rest situation last year, they had one game last year, was the Cincinnati game, where they had 13 days rest disadvantage. It was the biggest rest disadvantage of the year. And they played like total garbage in that Cincinnati game. They couldn't stop Cincinnati. Cincinnati just rampaged them, right?
Yep.
Well, this year, the lowest rest day they had was the Seattle home game. Seattle had like 7 days of extra rest. And at the end of that game, the Niners had nothing. Absolutely nothing. Nothing at all. No gas in the tank. Couldn't stop Geno to save their life. Geno ran right by Devondre Campbell like he was standing still.
Devondre Campbell.
It was an embarrassing effort. And so the 49ers got screwed. They played 4 teams coming off the bye. They got totally screwed with the schedule, and the way it set up was the moment where they needed to win, they got involved in their worst schedule disadvantage, and they were flat, and they lost, and that's it. They were 2 years ago they were 11-1 in the division, and this year they only won 1 game in the division. So that's
Kevin said he got you an iPad, by the way. Did you fail to mention that? He said he got you an iPad.
Kev got me an iPad for Christmas.
That's a good gift, man.
Yeah, that was a great
gift.
That's
a really good gift. My kid has never gotten me anything near that.
Oh, it's amazing. I'm watching like film. I'll watch I'm watching.
Dude, I got like 3. I love iPads, man. I got like 3 of them. They're the best.
Oh, it's fantastic. I'll be sitting there and I'm just, watching highlights of different offensive linemen, different defensive linemen.
Dude, I can't wait till we go full-blown draft. Like you're just letting out little bits and pieces of draft. For those who are not in the know, around draft time, just rip off the knob. You don't need to go to any other shows, do any other things. You'll be the smartest guy at the draft party. There will be no women at said draft party, but still, you'll be the smartest person at the draft party because all you got to do is listen to Krueg. And you'll know first rounders. Come on, man. Krueg doesn't even talk about first rounders.
First round. Come on.
That's too easy. That's like low hanging fruit for you.
Right. That's just
people have no idea. Like a lot of people do, but some people, if you're new around here, you wait, man.
Yeah.
Your knowledge.
Even the seventh rounders, it's like the thing really gets rolling when the draft's over.
Exactly. I'm telling you, especially you're just like the Niners. Like, come on, first round, get out of here. You start like the second and pass. That's what the Niners do. They didn't even look at the first round guys. You're just like fresh. Anyway. Good
stuff. Thanks to everybody. Oh man, always tell people where they can find you, Johnny. Tell people where and when you put out your content and how they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, I'm on. I'm like you. I do it a bunch of times, but first show of the day is at 8:00 in the morning Pacific at John Lund Unleashed on YouTube and at John Lund Radio on all social media. So thank you for letting me do a free plug there. And you were the godfather of it all, and we're just all a bunch of minions behind you. So I appreciate you, and I appreciate you having me on, man. You're the best.
And Niner Matt, one last super says, what about a longer contract but a little less money? I like it. Niner Matt. I like the fact that you're always coming up with different ideas.
That's Giants philosophy.
Yeah,
exactly. We'll go larger money. We don't want to go larger years.
Yeah, exactly. Welcome to the NL West, where the Giants haven't won since I think I was a single man the last time the Giants won. Anyway,
wow,
it's been a while. Thanks to everybody. Have a great night. Peace.
Yeah, never met a man.